In this video, I want to talk about board breaking. And I know this is a subject that I haven't covered very often in my videos. I don't think I have any board breaking videos up on my channel right now, although I do have dozens of them recorded that I have available for students. But just to cover the color belt breaking techniques and stuff of that nature, all the really impressive looking breaks, if you will, that starts more around black belt level, and so those things you usually need multiple holders, and it's a little more difficult to coordinate and set up those ones. So, other than when I did them at the test, I've really never had to do those ones since then. So, but a lot of schools fixate heavily on board breaking, and board breaking is something where there is value to having board breaking in the martial arts curriculum. I have it in my curriculum as well. But the techniques that you're learning need to be of practical value. And then the board breaking basically demonstrates that you have the power to deliver those techniques effectively so that you could actually damage somebody with them. But when you start getting into techniques that have no practical value whatsoever, and you start getting into gimmicks and stuff like that with the breaking, then you have to question what it is that you're doing. What is the value behind what you're doing? So if you look at this here, I wanted to show this particular video. This is a recent video here. You can see that the guy is set up to break two concrete pieces. He's breaking the like the garden edging stones that you could buy. And to somebody that's looking at this, somebody that doesn't have any training whatsoever, this looks like a very, very impressive break. But the reality of it is that these stones here are almost twice the length of the cinder block pieces that you see, what are often called soap blocks. So they're twice as long. They're only about, this wide. They're, probably like this in terms of width, this wide across, and then the thickness is about, I want to say maybe 2 inches thick or so for these blocks. But you have to understand that there's a space in between these. So they're using square steel pegs on either side to set it up and create a gap, about 1/4 of an inch thick gap between these pieces. So while it looks like he's breaking two, technically he's really only breaking one. And given how long these pieces are, obviously they're not very well supported in the middle. They're also quite heavy, so under their own weight, they're actually under a fair amount of strain, even before you apply any kind of a breaking force to them. So to break these pieces, it looks really impressive, but in reality, it's about the equivalent of breaking 3 pine boards with no space between. So if he had put these blocks closer together and taken a 12-inch wide pine board, 12 by 12, 1 inch thick, put the pine boards in, stack them on top of each other, and place 3 boards with no space, that would be the same amount of difficulty as breaking those 2 garden stones that they're doing in this video. So when you look at it, if you see somebody breaking wooden boards, visually it doesn't look as spectacular. People look at it and say, well, that's easy, I could do that. And there's a lot of people that can do it. But there's also a lot of people that do it and get injured doing it because they're not hitting properly. And I've learned that the hard way myself from breaking boards improperly, where I broke the board, but I also got injured in the process of breaking it. So you really have to have good technique to be able to break effectively. And these, it looks good for demonstrations when people do this and they break the patio stones. It looks really impressive, but it's really no more difficult than breaking the pine boards. And so at a certain point, you got to ask yourself, is this like, what is the value behind this technique? What is the student really learning? And is this just a gimmick? And so you look at this here, what he's setting up for a downward palm strike on these boards. And we're going to watch the video. I'll play it through. But you can see he's open hand. He's got his thumb untucked here. He's setting up for a palm strike. And the question is, so he's going to break this. So there it is. Okay, so he broke through it. The question is, what is the value in that technique? What is the practical application of that technique? Where would you ever use that technique in the real world? When would your opponent ever be in that position where you could do that technique? And the answer is, there is no practical application for that technique in the real world. It doesn't have any use whatsoever. It's just for show. Just for show and nothing more. So if you look at this, if instead of doing a downward palm strike, if they had done, for example, a downward knife hand strike as an example, you could argue that a knife hand strike has value, right? You can bring it over the top and you can strike somebody down in the collarbone, or, if the opponent is bent over a little bit, you could strike somebody in the back of the neck, whatever, that the technique has some value. But when would you ever strike somebody with a palm like this, coming straight downward and getting that low down? And the answer is never. So, when I watch this, there's a lot of schools that fixate on martial arts. And there's a certain type of student that tends to fixate on breaking. Usually heavier set student, somebody that's got big bones, somebody that's stocky and heavy built. They are essentially built for board breaking. Like, that's sort of the body type that you need if you want to really do heavy board breaking, but and demonstrate power. But if the techniques that you're doing have no real world applicability, then the question is, what are you doing them for? Like, what is the purpose behind that? And if it's just to show off in front of a crowd of people that haven't watched martial arts before, then, like I said, it's sort of like a magic trick. It's smoke and mirrors. It's, you're doing parlor tricks. You're doing something that looks more difficult than it actually is. And so, what is the value in that? So I'm going through this, I'm watching this. This is actually, this is an individual here that I've actually known since he was a white belt. So we go way, way back in the martial arts. We both trained at the same school. But again, here, he's setting up for the break. And you can see there he broke it with half of a wind up, and it was enough to break. But like I said, it's nice that you can do that, and it shows that you have conditioned your hands for breaking. Part of martial arts practice is to develop the striking tools so that you've got, the hands are toughened up, the knuckles are toughened up, and so on, so that if you actually get into a fight, you can do damage to your opponent because you've built up those striking tools. But it only goes so far, and unfortunately there are some schools that put way too much emphasis on the board breaking and the brick breaking, and it just becomes like a bravado thing, and people want to show off. And I've seen tournaments where people have broken their arms trying to do breaking and trying to do too much material, and it's a lot of students hurt themselves very badly when they're doing this stuff. And you've probably heard the famous quote that bricks don't hit back, right? So it's nice, it's a demonstration of power, but you're actually not, in many cases, you're actually not seeing as much power as you might think that you're seeing. And even if you are, the question is, when would you ever use that technique? How would you ever take that and use it against an opponent in real life? So anyway, that's, I thought I'd I thought I'd show this because this is, like here you can very clearly see the space between the boards there. And I'm not familiar with the guy in the blue, but I am familiar with the other guy. I've trained with him for a very long time, so. Yeah, I mean, that's about all I wanted to say on that video. It's just, I can put up videos on breaking if people are interested in seeing that kind of stuff, but keep in mind that the focus is going to be on practical breaking techniques. It's not going to be on going for show. It's going to be on going for stuff that actually is required by the test curriculum at my school and techniques that have a practical use behind them. Something where you're getting real value out of it. All right, so till next time, thanks.